Welcome everyone to this panel, Ngā Aho Kōrero, and we will start first with Karakia by Lucy Tukua.
Tēnā tātou katoa, me karakia tātou, tuia ki te rangi, tuia ki te whenua, tuia ki te moana, tuia ki ngā ira tangata. Ka rongo te pō, ka rongo te ao, haumi e, hui e, tai ki e.
Oh, kia ora. Thank you very much. Well, welcome to this, our first event, our opening event of PDC Places Tāmaki Makaurau. Thank you very much for Ngā Aho Māori Design, for Lucy Tukua, Josephine Clarke, Dr Diane Menzies, and Desna Pangasholum in the back with this, supporting this kaupapa. So this is the first event of PDC Places Tāmaki Makaurau. We are part of the Participatory Design Conference 2022, and the topic that we are using this for our PDC Places connection to place. So we will have events. Today is the first event until Thursday. So today is an online event. The second one tomorrow it's in Takanini Library, led by Auckland Co-Design Lab, and on Wednesday we have one in person too in the design programs here in the University of Auckland. And then the last one is another online panel between the three organizations. So first I want to acknowledge and thank our partners and the support that we're having from institution, the University of Auckland, and for Auckland Co-Design Lab, part of the Southern Initiative, TSI, and our hostess today, Ngā Aho Māori Design. So thank you very much for this journey, walking this journey with us. We're very grateful for your presence and for sharing your kōrero today. So I will read a little bit of what is PDC. So PDC Places Tāmaki Makaurau is part of the 17th Biennial Participatory Design Conference. Through connection to place as the focus of exploration, PDC 2022 seeks to expand on the idea of the conference to places as points for local and worldwide connections. This year's theme, Embracing Cosmologies, Expanding Worlds of Participatory Design, seeks to invoke a hopeful design of social justice that responds to multiplicity and relational interdependence. The conference will explore what it means to embrace cosmological approaches to participatory design. So based on the tikanga on participatory design, PDC Places Tāmaki Makaurau brings together the design program of the University of Auckland, the Auckland Co-Design Lab, part of the Auckland Council and the Southern Initiative, and Ngā Aho to share experiences of Māori and participatory and co-design practices with and by communities in the context of Aotearoa, New Zealand. So welcome everyone. Thank you for sharing with us this afternoon. And then I will pass the mic out to our guests today.
Kia ora, tēnā tātou katoa, tuatahi e mihi tēnei kia koe Diana. Nau tō whakatau kia mātou, te whānui o Ngā Aho, tēnā koe. Engari tuatahi e mihi ki ngā atua kia rātou katoa, kua whitirangitia, te kingi Māori tūheitia, te whare kāhui ariki, tira tangata, rātou e māuiui te ana, pai marire kia tātou, kia kau te katoa, e mā takitaki mai, ngā waka e maha huri noa i te motu, te ao pea hoki, nei rā te mihi atu kia tātou, nō reira tēnā tātou katoa. So yeah, it's a really important kaupapa purpose in terms of why we're here. Definitely as an indigenous person, the kōrero and the stories around place and connection to place is really important. I think of this little whakatauki, this proverb, Tāmaki Makaurau, Tāmaki heringa waka, Tāmaki heringa tangata, is really important, being the first peoples of this land, and in particular where we are today in Tāmaki Makaurau. So Tāmaki of many lovers, Tāmaki of 100 lovers, and now we've got over 1.7 million. Tāmaki where waka were tethered, Tāmaki where people gathered. We also mihi to your places that you are connected to and that you have, whether it be where you reside today or whether it is connected through your genealogy. Kia ora tātou. Diana, thank you. So in terms of that, that connection, it's really important, I guess, from a Māori perspective, that we acknowledge our whakapapa and we talk about our pepeha and our connection to place. As a practitioner, supporting not only mana whenua, but also developers, council, agencies, ministries to come together in a good way. One of the questions that I always pose in my opening, in the first hui that we're able to come together, is asking the question with regards to sharing what water body resonates closely with you, whether that be spiritually or someplace where you've grown up beside, or where you have a tribal connection to. The important thing about this way of starting any gathering is that water brings us together. It doesn't separate us. And so there's always a beautiful opportunity to be able to hear stories from all over the world in terms of places where people connect to one another. As a regenerative practitioner, whakarito is the word that I would use in terms of what regenerative practice means to me. And it was given to me by an elder from Tūhoi who talked about rito as being the centre shoot of the flax bush. If you take out that centre shoot, then the flax bush will not survive. Whakaora is also a kupu, or a word that we use to describe regenerative practice. Ora meaning life, and whakaora is around that prosperity. Thank you. Place-sourced, Indigenous-led and community-fed is the way in which I operate. It's a term that came to me when I was sitting in a meeting in Halifax after presenting at an Indigenous, well, actually it wasn't Indigenous, it was Halifax Placemaking Conference. One of the things that really resonated with me was the way in which here in Aotearoa, we are very, I guess, active in our places and spaces, working with many, across many projects, particularly to be able to, as mana whenua, as iwi, as tribes of Tāmaki Makaurau, to have the opportunity to express not only our cultural narratives, but also to be able to manifest those narratives in built form. And so the opportunity that we see to hear and feel the places we love, and to also share those with our communities, our Indigenous pūrākau, and storytelling, deepen not only our connection, but also the community, supporting them as well to bring their lived experience and to breathe and to imbue our connection to these places. When I think about place sourced, it's so much more than place-based. It has so much more, I guess, feeling in terms of particularly our cultural kōrero and whakapapa, and I know Diane's going to talk about this as well, just in terms of our connection to our Earth Mother, seeing patterns in our environment, natural and lived experiences, allows us to be able to, I guess, connect not only more deeply with place, but also to have those stories embedded in our landscapes, embedded in our architecture, so that when our mokopuna and their mokopuna come after us, they're able to actually see their faces in their places, in our places. Growing capacity and capability also means being able to not only do the work, particularly around daylighting streams, but it must also start with daylighting minds in the first instance. Thank you, Diana. Mai te whenua is a practice where we need to really understand what it is that this place is calling to be. I'm not sure that this awataha, this stream, really wanted to be piped. We had a engagement day with the community here in Northcote in Awataha, and they were really curious as to why this placard was poked in the ground, and essentially it was to let everybody know that the stream, the Awataha stream, no longer wanted to be piped, and this, and a lot of the people, a lot of the community there didn't even know that the stream existed. And so when we think about connection to place, you know, what are those really tangible ways in which we can give voice to place that becomes really, really meaningful, particularly to those communities. The way in which we develop and work with our architects, our creatives, to express those cultural narratives. This one here is at a train station, one of our stations in Panmure, with a wayfinding device up in the ceiling that reaches out to those sacred sites within this particular area. So mai te whenua definitely makes us think more about those places and spaces that we work in and how we bring life to them. Thank you. This is an example of a project that I'm currently involved in with Chinese developers, 1,600 apartments. When we think about that place sourced, the red dot is where the project is, and then as we move out from that space, we get to acknowledge not only this place, but the relationship that it has to the surrounding area. And we talk about it as being nested systems, the relationship to the moana, the relationship to the awa, to Waiōtaiki as well. So it's really important that there is an opportunity for mana whenua to educate those that they work alongside and partner with in this particular development. Has been in train for 5 years, and mana whenua always say that it's one of the biggest projects that they're currently working on, but it's one of the easiest. And it's really important in terms of those relationships that they're strong and robust, and mana whenua have an opportunity to lead. So the name Te Tauama was a mountain, a maunga that was quarried And so mana whenua gifted the name Te Tauama to this development. Thank you. So mai te iwi takitaki indigenous led. It's really important that indigenous communities, and in particular mana whenua who have a relationship to, in this case, Tāmaki Makaurau, have an opportunity to share their cultural narratives, to be able to educate the community, because when we think about like developments like Te Tauama, you know, those that will eventually reside in that area aren't just buying into some narrative that was imported from overseas. They're really buying into or connecting to those places of significance and hearing the kōrero from the iwi themselves, which is really important. Thank you. So this is the way in which cultural narratives can be manifested in the built environment. And mana whenua on this particular development have been able to establish their own design team. So architect, landscape architect, and also their Māori kaitoi designers who have been able to articulate those cultural narratives into the architecture and into the landscape, partnering with these developers to ensure that, you know, it's just not another development pretty similar to ones around it that do not express that cultural connection, to be able to tell their stories and to share it with those that will one day reside here, plus also the community. Thank you. Mai te hapori, it's really important, particularly for mana whenua, when working with the community, that they're fully engaged, attending various events, supporting particularly our schools. Lots of projects that I've been involved with, the Northcote project that showed the awataha previously, but also this one, the Puhunui. Mana whenua decided that and expressed it to council and others that they weren't just about supporting the regeneration of the Puhunui within a certain, I guess, area. So they were able to influence council and particularly some of the ministries as well who provide funding for this development, for this work, to look at the source of the Puhunui out into the Manukau Harbour. And so mana whenua have been able to influence a lot of these projects far more extensively in support of community as well. So that's really important. Kia ora. Yes, so as a placemaking kaupapa, I've been involved with the establishment of this organisation, Placemaking Aotearoa. When I presented at a conference overseas, it was really important to ensure that when we think about placemaking, it's the narrative is a little bit different to how we might consider placemaking, because from an Indigenous perspective, we don't make place makes us. And so how do we as practitioners ensure that we do and we are connecting more deeply to place? A kaumātua talks about te karekare o te wai, listening to the voice of the waters, and also to the voices of the whenua of the land. And so that's really important as we move through working with communities when it comes to activations and ensuring that they're really involved with the mana whenua, kōrero and cultural narrative of place. Kia ora. Toitu te kupu, toitu te mana, toitu te whenua. Whatu ngaro te tangata, toitu te mana o Papatuanuku. Kia ora tātou.
Kia ora, mamihi nui, Lucy. And I actually will read your bio because it's like, yeah, just for people to know a little bit more about you and the pleasure of the honor to having you here. So Lucy Tukua, he uri no hauraki, nati paua me nati whanaunga, me waikato arako nati tahinga. Lucy has an extensive background across many disciplines and acknowledges her deep learnings stemming from those traditional places of gathering, marae, the sacred sites of her ancestors, wahitapu, and the knowledge repositories, matauranga, of her elders, tupuna. She's a child of Tāmaki Makaurau, Auckland, her tribal land. Lucy has been passionate advocate for Ngā Aho since their inception, the representative on Auckland Council's Urban Design Panel, and now Governance Interface. Supporting the establishment and efforts of Aotearoa placemaking, she is recognized as a global placemaking thought leader who advocates that from an indigenous perspective, place makes us. Lucy is a regenerative practitioner, delivering a place-source, culture-led, and community-fed approach to her work. She's Kaitahu Pakarito, Technical Director, Regenerative Outcomes, wrote for a global engineering management and development consultancy, and was recently appointed to the Auckland Light Rail Board for one of the largest infrastructure developments in New Zealand. Her life's work continues to merely serve place and culture. Mauri ora.
Kia ora,
again, thank you very much for your kōrero. And let's share now Josephine. So I will read this time. I will read her profile before we start with her presentation. Josephine Clarke has over 10 years of experience in New Zealand as a landscape architect, indigenous cultural advisor, project manager, environmental project advisor, Kaitiaki team leader, and site manager. Josephine's professional goals focus on the inclusion of Te Ao Māori values as an approach to design, integrating cultural integrity and authenticity. The current director of Earth Feather Limited, Josephine's iwis affiliation are Ngāti Porou, Te Whanau a Hinerupe, Te Whanau a Apanui, Te Whanau a Kawhatangohia, aroha mai for the pronunciation, Ngā Puhi, Ngāti Rangi ki Nafa, Te Rarawa, Ngāti Moroki, Te Aupouri, Te Riuma Kutu, Ngāti Mata, Ngāti Kahu, Te Hoerewa, Te Patu. She specializes in several fields of landscape architecture and urban design, particularly in cultural, expressive, and integrating design for the public and private sector in Northland Auckland, Bay of Plenty, and the wider Waikato region. She also has experience designing for apartments and residential developments, papakainga, master planning, ecological restoration, ecological monitoring, Te Ao Māori perspective, inclusion of Maramataka, cultural health index, cultural advising, co-design, Māori frameworks, and project management. Welcome, Josephine, and thank you very much for sharing your kōrero today with us. And I will, the floor is yours.
I te tatai tēnā koe, Diana, mō tō kōrero, mō tātou nei hui. Tēnā koe i te tuākana Lucy mō tō tuwhera mo tō karakia timatanga e hoki te reo o te whenua nei o Tāmaki Makaurau. Ko Josephine Clarke, Aho. The bio says it all, but I like to think of myself as a kaitaki. Te aki whenua, te aki tangata, te aki tātou mātauranga mai ngā kōrero tuku iho o mātou tipuna. Today is tangaroa whakapau, tangaroa phases of the maramataka, being grateful to learn alongside one of my whanaunga in Ngā Tirangi, refining and calibrating my own measurements and observations of maramataka. So tangaroa moon phases are calm, but they also offer us the ability to witness and watch a lot of the different kararehe, the different animals, birds, eels, critters, invertebrates that are roaming around in our taiao. Akuata is the month, and because of the take, no te roro, nā ki te roro ka ora ai te iwi. We can go to the next slide. Grateful for Ngā Aho, and our wahine workshop we had in Tokomaru at Matariki. That's where this image comes from Damien Nikora, and these are some of the mahi that I've done using mātauranga Māori te puakeo ki Tamaki, ki te taha o awataha, I raro i te kura o raki pai whenua. I've gone through Kōrero, Kurakaupapa. I went to Westlake Girls, and then I went over to Unitec to study landscape architecture. I had two separate wānangas at the same time. I had wānanga of landscape architecture and building one at Carrington, and then I would run away to the marae, to Pukinga, to Ngā Kaumahaki, where I had the whānau there teaching me around te waka minenga, te tiriti, and our connections of mātauranga Māori, tā moko, he maha. So I was lucky. I had two separate universities at the same time, which offers me the support and confidence to be able to engage with our whānau Māori. We'll go to the next slide. This is our babies in Ngātirangi, in Ngāwha. This was an event we ran teaching our taiohi. The oldest would have been 14, and the youngest is the one right next to the hingaki and his uncle Alistair, and he's 2. And so we're teaching our babies about eels, about setting hinaki, about the maramataka, about kauri dieback in this wānanga. We talked to them about catching eels, the various critters, just observations again. We also got them to pick taraere seed, and a lot of our babies up north in Ngātirangi don't actually speak Māori. For us to offer them kupu like tuna, kupu like taraere, that's a little bit more of their whakapapa and connection to land. So when they were picking the taraere, it was just after the rākau nui, so the seed kind of just dropped off the tree. They're the best seed finders because their fingers are small, their eyes are sharp, so they were having competitions to find the most seed. All those seeds have been propagated and will come back into our whenua in the next couple of planting seasons. Next slide. This is some mahi that I've done alongside Uru Whakaaro alongside Charmaine for Ngātai ki Tamaki. With Motatapu, we did a project plan with them for the 1BT, which is the Billion Trees project. And it was about establishing their own nursery, hiring their own people to do plant out, and they've continued that process and that project since, and hired, I think, about 6. So like Lucy was talking about, it's all about building capability of whānau and offering support for them to connect to the taio. Next slide. So these 2 projects in this one side, I was a kaitiaki for Hokai Nuku. The Hokai Nuku had a business partnership agreement with NZTA for the Pūhoi to Warkworth Highway. So I worked there for about 2.5 years, doing observations, working alongside ecologists, catching eels, you know, doing our cultural practices, cultural safety, health and safety on building sites. We picked rongoa for kai mirimiri. We did cultural harvest for Kōrero. We did, we caught moko moko in the night. We monitored bats. Yeah, so it was a privilege to work alongside kaitiaki and whānau, looking after our kararehe, you know, our tupuna, our whakapapa. On the right hand side, this was a project that I did last year for a planner. It was for whānau that wanted to have access to 2 dwellings on Aotea and Kotuku Cove. And so the planner said to me, Josie, I want to do best practice in terms of mana whenua engagement. And so we did, prior to lodgement of the resource consent, process of finding or using all the appropriate material that we're going to go ahead with AEE, the Assessment of Environmental Effects proposal. And I luckily knew some whānau from Aotea that I could lean on to send all that information prior to lodgement. You know, most of the time our tangata whenua engaged towards the middle of the project or the end of the project. But yeah, we just wanted to show that you can do it from day dot. Next slide. This is Pūni River Care. I was lucky enough to go and support whānau. I live in Waikato, and this is a blessing we did at Tautihanga Pā. Tautihanga Pā is close to Parawera Marae. It's on a private dairy farm, 130 years or so since the Uri have stepped foot on this whenua. And we did about 56,000 native trees to restore this pā. And the farmer was really open to having whānau Māori come in and out whenever they felt like they needed to be there. So Pūni River Care, they have their own nursery at Mangatoa Pā in Maniapoto. They do a lot of restoration of the Pūni catchment. And so this project was just one of their projects that they got through the 1BT fund, and then I just came in to do some project management. And I think for the total, we planted 75,000 rako over 12 hectares of land over 5 different farms within the Waikato, connecting Parongia Mountain to Maunga Tautari. Yeah, next slide. Kia ora.
Kia ora, Josephine. Thank you very much, Ngā mihi nui, for sharing your experiences here in Aotearoa. So now I will continue and read the Dr. Diane Menzies' profile. Rongo Whakawhanaungatanga Aitanga Amahaki. English and Scottish descent. Diane is a kahui whetū, member of Ngā Aho. She's a past president, secretary general, and honorary member of the International Federation of Landscape Architects, a trustee of the Landscape Foundation, a past president and life member of Tuia Pitu Ora, New Zealand Institute of Landscape Architects, and a member of ICOMOS IPLA, Cultural Landscape Committee. With qualifications in landscape architecture, horticulture, business management, mediation, and a PhD in resources studies, Dr. Menzies has worked for the government, was a local government elected representative, an environment court commissioner, and is now director of Land Cult Limited. Her research focus in cultural landscape and social justice. Kia ora, Diane. Thank you very much for sharing your kōrero with us today. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Diana. Ngā mihi nui kia koutou. Greetings to you all who have joined us. We've been talking about place that makes us. And I'll be talking about place and identity and some other aspects of place. But I'll do that by talking first about the place that you first saw, the place with the birds. And I'll do that with my pepeha first. Ko Manawaru te Monga, ko te Arai te Awa, ko Ronga Whakata te Iwi, ko Manu Tuke te Whenua. Just to explain, Manawaru, my mountain, is fairly small, but it's very important because that is the mountain that was first planted in kumara, brought all the way from the Pacific by Hene Hākirirangi, the sister of the captain of the canoe, Horota, who first landed in that area. And Manu Tuke, the whenua name, celebrates the birds, the kōtuku that were in that first slide, that lived in the area in the tall trees, very special white herons. So my connections are to water, to birds, to people and trees in that area. And we were planting trees to regenerate and protect the waterways when I was there a few weeks ago. But moving to the much larger place that makes us, that we connect to, and that is to our creation stories, to Ranginui, the Sky Father, and Papatūānuku, the Earth Mother, and this beautiful illustration of the universe, the cosmos, and the other things that Māori embrace, the land and everything that is connected to her. So I'll be talking about place and spirit and life force and how they are integrated. Go on to talk about Ngā Aho a little and then put in just a word to do with aging. Next, please. So our identity and the place that makes and shapes us, is it the place where we were born? I was born in Te Whanganui-a-Tara, Wellington. And as a kid, I used to play in the stream, in our neighbour's stream. And from my home, I could look over the hills and down to the harbour and the water, and it was always changing. It was powerful. There was movement of cloud, movement of water, changes of colour, and a lot of wind. Maybe that's what's had a role in making me and shaping me. Next. But when we're looking at connections of places and identity, is it where we live now as well? And I live in Tāmaki Makaurau, also a place of water, a harbour, and I'm looking right now out at the Waitemata harbour with the sun gradually going down and the water turning murky. And this is the place where my great-great-grandfather and great-great-grandmother lived in City Street, not far from me. So place has connections. It may be the links to that water, because the great-great-grandfather also came from a place of harbours and water and sailing. But turning to another place again, this is the land behind the lagoon that you first saw. It's certainly where I'm connected to, where my pepeha and my whakapapa links me to ancestors. This headland is called Tukuri, the dog of the captain of the canoe that landed there. And people have seen the upturned hull of this canoe in the lagoon years ago when a storm exposed it. Then it disappeared again a few days later. So place is where you're connected to, where you feel your heart is, even though you may not necessarily be living there. Next slide. So what about spirit, which is part of place? When women call visitors onto the marae, onto our meeting places, they call the spirits as well, our ancestors. And when those who are visitors respond, they also recognise and call on the spirits of the ancestors. And we welcome those spirits too, because they are with us always. So spirit is with us, part of our ritual, part of place, part of our identity. Next slide. So how in turn is life force part of us? Mauri, the name for life force, is in rocks. It's in the living and the non-living. It's in water. It's in plants and animals and all the taiao, the environment around us. And we are part of that. We are part of place. We are part of landscape. It shapes us. We are not separate from it. So in thinking about place, we're thinking about all things, the life force, the spirit, the identity, the ancestors, and the metaphysical founding stories, creation stories, all part of the same thing. Next slide. So just to talk about Ngā Aho. Ngā Aho has been a huge support for me. It's been part of a network, part of my network, and members share their skills, their knowledge, their activities. This was a collab, and Jackie Paul, one of our members, was helping with that collab at Gleninnis a while ago. Next slide. But we're also a community, and we're about communities as a collective. We share ideas, we debate issues, we come up with different ideas of how to work together. We share food. We mostly share our knowledge and connections with each other and in turn with our communities. The one thing I wanted to say about Ngā Aho, though, was, before I leave this slide, is they have a particular approach which is not unusual in te ao Māori world, and that is tuākana teina. The tuākana is the older sister or older brother, as the case may be, and the teina is the younger. So we have emerging professionals, and we as more senior or elderly members of Ngā Aho are there to support those young professionals, young designers, young who work as co-designers and so on, so that they will blossom. The saying, the Māori whakatauki that goes with this is to water the seed and it will blossom. And Ngā Aho's teina are blossoming with this support. Next slide. But one thing I do ask before I return to creation stories is that in your communities you think of the older as well as the younger too, because at the moment many older people, older designers even, are becoming disconnected because of technology. The changes are going so fast that some of us may not be keeping up and begin to feel excluded. So think of the ways that when change is happening, all of our communities can be included. So returning to the Sky Father and the Earth Mother and the light that appeared in the world when they were separated. Life force there is integral to what we understand as place. We are intimately connected, there is no separation. And we as Māori designers, landscape architects, all sorts of designers, researchers, planners, we work together. You may have different ideas on the founding stories of the universe, on creation and of ancestors and the importance of people linked to environment. But if we can all share our ideas about the universe, about our understandings of place, I think we can all learn new things, and that in turn, that knowledge can be used to help us solve the wicked problems, climate change, biodiversity loss, and all the other issues that our world, our Mother Earth is facing. So, thank you, Lucy, for your karakia. Thank you, Diana, for organising us, and tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa.
Kia ora, Diane. Thank you very much for your kōrero. I will ask if we can share now turn on our cameras, and if we can see now the windows instead of focusing on the screen, but like to have all the panelists present. I also want to let you know that this is a panel that is recorded, and we have a Q&A section there. Like if you see in the bottom of your screen, there's a chat option, and there's also a Q&A button. If anyone wants to ask any question to our panelists, you're welcome to ask anything at the moment. But first, I want to again, I won't get tired to acknowledge Ngā Aho in my own journey and my PhD as well in my research, because I had the pleasure to meet Ngā Aho members my first year that I arrived in Aotearoa, and then in one of the whanaungas, I could present my first ideas of what the PhD was, and it really changed my perspective of how to do research. It's not only, like how we engage, the importance of relationality and all of that. And that's something that I have deep appreciation for Ngā Aho members, especially the wahine, this amazing wahine that have been, the women that have been, as Diane was explaining, the tuākana teina relationship. I'm teina in this land, and I'm learning so much from Te Ao Māori that even it has helped me to look back into my own whakapapa in a different lens and feel my kete, that it was not as full as it should. So kia ora, ngā mihi nui, everyone here, for all the amazing teachings that I have walked alongside you, and thank you for that. Okay, so could you talk a little bit more about the tuākana teina connection, because that's something that is, I think it's very important, Diane, that you touch on that, and Josephine too, like with your mokopuna, like with not only rangatahi, but really teaching since very young, engaging to be in touch with the environment, the taio, and how we can still foster those intergenerational connections rather than only work alongside people with our own generation. So how that experiences, if you can elaborate a little bit on those connections. Maybe we can start, whoever who wants to start, and then, or if not, someone wants to go first?
Oh, well, I mentioned it, so I'll say something very briefly while perhaps I'll then hand over to Lucy. I think it's something that is integral to Te Ao Māori, is the Māori way of doing things, to keep those connections. It's also in the family, of course. The tuākana is the oldest or older in the family, and of course it relates to the same sex. So tuākana is the older sister, teina the younger sister, and that links what Ngā Aho has been doing with a special event for women at Matariki, our celebration of the new year, where we all were able to come together and share those ideas. And yes, the younger ones were learning a haka right at night when I had snuck off to bed because it was way past my bedtime, but maybe we're better getting up early in the morning instead. So there's all sorts of things that we can learn from each other. Obviously, technology is one thing that I can learn from, and have done so with Josephine just recently. I think it was a bit of a failure, but I'll keep trying to do that. So yes, it comes in various different ways, and I think it's just an example of how Ngā Aho supports different roles, different knowledge, and sharing. Lucy.
Kia ora, and thank you for that pātai, for that question. When I think about tuākana teina, for me it is around having a certain sense of humility, to know your place. It's kind of like it's kind of like, you don't talk above your elders. Same. It's the same concept, tuākana teina. The other part to it is when we think about haukainga versus manuhiri, there's that certain element of, when you are in Tāmaki, the narratives that are carried by mana whenua, because they are the haukainga, can only be told by them. And so if you are a visitor to Tāmaki, whether you come from outside of the country, or you may come from, you know, other parts of New Zealand, of Aotearoa. If I go to Ngāti Porou, to the East Coast, I know my place. I am the teina, and I will always respect the voice of mana whenua there, of the haukainga. So that it's just another little take on tuākana teina. Kia ora, Josephine.
Tēnā kōrero nā tuākana, me hia anō I tēnei pō. As I'm the teina, I guess one of my friends taught me, like, when we go on site, I always say that even though our kaitaki are 2 years old, they're more qualified at knowing their own whenua as tangata whenua than the engineers that went to study at university. So it's like respecting, like my tuākana saying, respecting the voices before you and the voices to come. Another flip on its head, I guess, is that in my own family, I'm the mātāmua, I'm the first, I'm the oldest. And then I have a teina, my sister, and then we have a tūnane, our brother, and he's the baby. But within our whānau, we each have a role where sometimes they're tuākana in particular parts of what they do and engage and interact, and I'm the teina. And so, yeah, my brother can be the tuākana in terms of he's on the other end of the reinga, the heke, the line within our little whānau. He can lead us in parakia, he can lead us in respecting the taiao. And so it's nice because then you don't have to carry everything on your own. You can rely on your siblings, you can rely on your whānau to support you in the mini kaupapa, which I found was helpful when we went to Tokomaru. It was awesome to catch up with our whānau, our wahine, to talk about these things and to come into these spaces to support one another. Yeah, good.
Thank you for that. It's very interesting, like reflecting on what you said of the importance of acknowledging the people of the place, right? Like if I see even in my own, let's say, education and background, I can remember my mother saying, like, if you go to someone's house, you follow their instructions, you follow what you are told, right? Like it's something that is, in a way, we think of as a basic, manners, but somehow when we do this type of engagement, or we do our mahi or our work, it's like those things are not embedded or disconnected, which shouldn't be, like part of our humanity and our and relations. So yeah, thank you for that. I'm definitely learning. Lucy, do you want to add?
I just wanted to ask a question, and it's just kind of just putting it out there in terms of those participants, those attendees online, just thinking about, when we talk about connection to place and the place where you are now, who is the tuākana of that place to you? We just talked about, I guess, who the primary people are of a place from an Indigenous perspective. And so just something to think about in terms of where you might be today, not necessarily in Tāmaki, perhaps. Yeah, so that just wanted to leave that there.
Kia ora, thank you. Yeah, and that's an open invitation right now. If the chat is open, so if you know who are the tuākana in the land that you're standing at the moment, or from the lands that you were born, you can just type it in the chat. And also that acknowledgement, right, like of our own tupuna, our own ancestors that we carry everywhere we go, but also from the land that sometimes is not the same as the place of birth, right? Like the place that we are born, like in my case as well, like I was born in, not in the same land of my whakapapa, but I know that the people of the place in the city that I was born is Soke, and then or Mayan later on, Totila and Sertal. So just knowing those things sometimes are not, it's not that we are encouraged to do that. So it would be great if you can start learning about the own place that you're standing. Another thing that I would like to ask, and if we can elaborate a little bit more, it's about being wahine. Wahine, and you as a wahine Maori, because personally, I always felt like the manaki, you know, like it's the relation is different, you know, like when I ask and having the with my colleagues here and with you, many places or many initiatives where we bring all these conversations about that go beyond, you know, like dominant discourses on productivity and measurement and impact and all of these other narratives. But sometimes and I quote here because I don't like even we call the soft skills, but the relational skill, like connections that we have of manaki, of aroha, like care and even love, you know, like, but in a relation. So that's something that I felt personally. I always felt personally fostered or comfortable in and bringing those conversations, because I know when I bring those conversations in a panel like this, I'm not going to be looked like, oh, that's weird to talk about these issues, because I feel comfortable that I can talk about these things with you. Is that something that it resonates to you too?
Well, perhaps I'll comment first, because I also wanted to comment on something I think it was Lucy said earlier about the difference between culture and the rather competitive and individualistic approach of professions. So from a general Western point of view, professions are expected to demonstrate the skills that they have, to perhaps design with flair, and from a landscape architecture point of view, it is there's a bit of ego there, should I say, that showing your design flair and ability is an expectation, maybe. Not necessarily so in Te Ao Māori world, because you're also expected to show humility. And I think that is where it can be a great advantage to designers, because it maybe encourages us more to collaborate better, to use working together with each other's skills and knowledge and abilities much better. And I think if we do that a whole lot more, we will be better designers. So think of the spirit of the place we're designing for, rather than our individualistic ways of designing. So yes, thank you, Diana. If we're together in a group, of course, we can share and not, I guess, hold it all to ourselves, because that's the way that we can move further forward in sharing views, sharing our ideas, sharing our fears or other things, because those will help us grow as well. I will, shall I pass the rākau to Josephine?
Tēnā koe Dai, tēnā koe Diana Albarrán, e pāna ki te wāhine, e pāna ki te hononga ki te whenua. Diane touched on it through her presentation around connecting to the creation story. And in some of our whakapapa, they vary, but depending on where you come from. The first human being created was Ngā Aho, and she was created from the whenua. And our mother is Papa Tuanaku. And so from my perspective, because I play in the sandpit and with the eels in the outside, you know, my connection is to whenua. And I don't have an experience in carrying mokopuna like my tuākana, but I can understand the beauty of that and how it creates our hapu, our tamariki, our taiohi, our mokopuna. And so I really enjoy being outside in the whenua, connecting to that place of wahine. And I feel e harana te kumarai ki mo tōna reka, which is a whakatauki about humility and is a tikanga. So yeah, a lot of our people don't like to talk about themselves. It's kind of sometimes can be against our own tikanga, like that whakatauki. Like Diane saying in our design industry, it's about showing your stuff, showing how great you are at drawing, showing how great you are at designing, how you can take narratives and pūrākau like that, whakatauki, and transform it into beautiful designs. I think at the end of the day, it's about acknowledging the whakapapa of where those pūrākau come from. And we need to do it more in our design industry. When we apply for awards or do conferences or te mea, we should be acknowledging that tuākana voice, the reo of the whenua, the tangata whenua, mana whenua of that place, as a respect into who gifted that IP, the intellectual property, that mātauranga. So there's room for us to do better as designers. Yeah, I'll leave it there and hand over to Lucy.
Kia ora. When I talked about respect, I just wanted to acknowledge Ngā Aho. So I'm kind of one of those left field Māori. I talk about not having this alphabet soup after my name. I'm not an academic. The only degrees I have are the burns on my backside and the calluses on my hands. And in terms of the places and spaces that I've been able to move around in have been afforded to me because I've been involved with Ngā Aho since its inception. And so when constructs are put up like, you can't join this panel unless you have an affiliation to, New Zealand Institute of Architects or Landscape Architects. Well, I don't have any of that stuff. And the way that I've been able to engage in these different panels is because of my connection to Ngā Aho. And I think about the way in which, Ngā Aho has come about, those long conversations in the marae whare nui, going down country and talking about different kaupapa, te aranga design principles, values and principles is a good example. And as a collaborative and engaged group of Māori creators is what I call us, because I'm I'm not a, it's really important to me, and I guess it comes back to that principle of whanaungatanga, of just being able to hang out together and do what we do and do it really well, to be able to share our knowledge and our skills. I always say I'm one of the lucky Māori. I live in Papakura. My mum comes from Kaiaua, which is 40 minutes to the east, on the shores of Tikapa Moana, and my dad comes from the mouth of the Waikato River, Te Puaha, 40 minutes to the west. And so, I've been able to work alongside my iwi in a both governance and operational roles. And again, I always see myself as the teina, because I'm always learning off others as well. And even from Diana and her mahi and her PhD and all these trips that she takes overseas, I'm like, oh, I wish she could bring me a pair of earrings now. But I mean, it's time to have fun. We need to have fun, not to be too kind of like rigid in our thinking, tuākana teina, thinking about, treating in terms of tangata tiriti and tangata whenua, thinking about that in the context of tuākana teina is also another way that I guess, being brave and just kind of broadening your horizons and asking those questions that you really wanted to ask, and just conscious that, the chat is there. You better to ask us now than try and ring us or get in touch with us later. But yeah, thank you. I'm enjoying the kōrero. Thank you, Diana.
No, thank you, Lucy. And yeah, we still have that trip to Mexico planned later on. It's like it's still on the agenda now that all the abrupt pandemic situation happened worldwide, but definitely it's still on the agenda, I hope, because and also that's part of my my interest too, of how can we I will be academic now or nerd, but Walter Mignolo talks about delinking, like connecting away from the colonial matrix of power. Like, how can we connect between indigenous people without having this other lens of sometimes academia? Because I too, yes, that's something that part of my own interest and research, and just defining those labels that we use of, and the classifications that we have of art, design, craft, who's a designer, who can call themselves this, on that, an artist, and at the end, it's just the credentials, as you said, like, it's not the fact that someone didn't go to a design school properly, let's say, with a degree, but what they have, like from the place that I come from, the weavers and all the knowledge and all the years of experience that they have, because they learn since they're very, very young. Like that's all the way of knowing, all the way of learning that is as valid and ancestral and very rooted into identity and cultural practices, that is incredibly valuable, that we need to start appreciating way more than we do. Definitely. That's my 2 cents there. I'm checking in the chat if anyone has a pad thai or anything. I already asked. I realized that the chat was disabled. Thank you for that heads up there. If there's any Pata, your question that we can have now. No open question. Okay.
Diana, I did see one come through about tuākana, and who would be the tuākana from our ancestors? Was that it?
Yeah, I put it for the people who are attending the session today, that if they know who are the tuākana from the land that you're standing.
Okay. And that's a tricky question, because a lot may not know, and for those who have moved from out of their areas perhaps and into the city, it may be that some of that information has been lost. But going back to your comment that you made just now about academia being exclusive, professions are also exclusive. It's what they do. They, by their very nature, they exclude others from their group with qualifications or some other barriers, and there's no reason why those that are outside that group shouldn't be better designers, have more to share, and so on. So that is the joy, shall I say, and the opportunity that Ngā Aho presents, in that there's no lifting of barriers because you may have a qualification or you may have something else. It's about sharing those ideas and sharing cultural information as well, and sharing ritual, and just sharing kai as well, sharing food together to make a much deeper connection and to learn much more as well. So, and I think that's possibly what professions often don't do at all, that it becomes about a much narrower area of information and knowledge and contact. So that is I think the advantage that we have, and from my point of view, it's been learning from people, learning from Lucy, learning from others, learning from mana whenua, that I've been so grateful for, and confidence as well. So Lucy, over to you.
One of the, I guess, more provocative questions that I've asked at various hui, and that is simply, where are your bones from? And when we think about the way in which we talk about our pepeha, our whakapapa in connection to place, I'm supportive of those who are non-Māori acknowledging their connection to place. I guess when we think about it from a Te Reo Māori perspective, it's actually being able to, again, see yourself as a teina in the relationship and how you articulate that. So because here in Tāmaki Makaurau, I would say, ko te waitemata tōku moana. I'm a product, I'm a descendant of my oceans. And for non-Māori, I would, putting it out there, prefer to hear them say, ka tipu ahau I te taha o te moana tikapa o Waitemata. I grew up on the foreshores of the harbour of Te Waitemata, not tōku moana, because from, we have the whakapapa connection, we are the tuākana, but we're actually the teina to tikapa moana, to Waitemata. And so, you know, just really easy, I guess, flip on the narrative of that connection, because by doing it in that way, you actually acknowledge that whakapapa connection of Māori, of mana whenua, of mana moana to their sacred sites. So when we think about where your bone's from, that would be really beautiful to be able to share with us as Māori what your sacred mountain is. And it could be anywhere in the world. And I just want to acknowledge Yoko's Kōrero and her homeland in Japan. And so it gives us an opportunity as Māori to acknowledge your sacred mountains, your sacred rivers. And, you know, if you don't know it, kete pai, that's fine. And if you have to, if you do your pepeha and acknowledgement to those beautiful places where you grew up, then that's beautiful as well. So I just wanted to share that.
Yeah, I think that you touch on something that is very important, and I think I heard a lot of pakeha or me like to'iwi or tangata tiriti on when we engage in pepeha of, you know, like if it's appropriate or not. But I really like how you phrase it, because it's like you can talk about your pepeha, but as you said, it's not a whakapapa connection to that moana. It's more, I grew up and my connection through living and being surrounded by that by growing up. But the whakapapa connection in terms of it's different, you know. And just, I think as manuhiri here, including me, that's a great tip, you know, like a great advice that we could follow. And how can we engage that? Because at the same time, when we do that, it's again this teina relationship. It places us as teina from in Aotearoa. So thank you for that very good advice and observation. We're getting some comments here in the chat, and I will read some that are very, well, like I found it very interesting. Anjali saying, like, more a comment than a question. We're doing a cooperation research project, and when we have a team meeting, we place another chair around the table for the voices that we don't have in our project team currently or in the future. This might also be a space when we think about tuākana teina. Yeah, I heard that as well, like future generations. So you have your mokopuna present, and also your tupuna too, your ancestors. So you're acknowledging that intergenerational connection. So that's a nice. Thank you for your comment, Anjali. Shin, kia ora koutou, thank you for inspiring Kōrero. I wonder if Lucy could talk a bit more about the Tauoma. How was the interplay, the different cultural and value system between the Chinese developer and mana whenua? Great question, Shin. Lucy, would you like to?
Yeah, sure. So, so I'm the cultural director for Shundi Developers, and they're one of the largest, the more bigger Chinese developers in Auckland. I've been hanging out with these guys for about 5 years, and when I first became involved, they were really clear and sincere in terms of wanting to engage with mana whenua. So essentially my role was to consider the development, first and foremost, whether or not I wanted to jump in the sandpit with them, and, you know, whether they kind of tick these boxes. You know, some developers you wouldn't go anywhere near. And so it took us about maybe a couple of years to develop our relationship with mana whenua. Initially, I had to build their cultural capacity and capability and make sure that when the time was right for them to come into a room with mana whenua, that they weren't going to be abrasive, that they weren't going to, that they were going to have a conversation with mana whenua and that it would be okay. And the first meeting that we had with mana whenua, the comments from mana whenua was like, oh, that was really awesome because, you know, we'd gone down this whole journey. I'd gone down this whole journey with them to teach them how to articulate their pepeha, why mana whenua would say certain things, particularly as it relates to water and things like that. But what was really beautiful about it, and I should have kind of stopped to show it, was when they developed the logo for the development. Some of the questions that were being asked was, the taniwha of the iwi moko i ka hiku waru hung out in the Biennial Lagoon. So traditionally it was named the Kaia Hiku. And then mana whenua was saying, oh, what's your dragon? You know, and they were like, oh, we call it a lung. And so there was this beautiful relationship that started forming. And when we think about mana whenua reverence, mana whenua's reverence for nature, the Chinese culture also has a similar reverence for nature. And so it became, you know, easy conversations to have. The design itself looks at, provides this cultural expression with relation to those, to the lung and to the taniwha, because it's got these kind of hands which also reflect the mountain, the Te Tauoma mountain, and in behind that sits Maungarei, Mount Wellington. And so, like I said earlier, you know, mana whenua, they're always very supportive of these developers. On Friday night, the Chinese business community industry that the managing director of this development chairs had their gala dinner of 700 people, and mana whenua were invited, you know, to open the hui and participate and things like that. And so the opportunity as well to develop a cultural master plan. You know, I've been around for a little while and you don't see those around. They're just flat out black and white master plans. And so the master plan, the cultural master plan that we've developed for Te Tauoma basically has become the go-to. So whenever we present to council, local boards, you know, other developers in the area, it's always a cultural master plan that gets the outing, not the, you know, the master plan that you kind of see being strung out around the place. So thank you for your question.
Thank you for that comment. Okay, there's more comments coming, but I think we're running out of time. So I will just briefly, I will tie to these two comments. Leona Design, Kanui Temihi, how does the world of consultancy factor in the time needed to immerse ourselves in Te Māori during project allocated time, which is often competitive, which is interesting. And then I will close, well, this is one question. And the last one will be, as tangata tiriti and a teina, how can a designer in Aotearoa learn more appropriate ways to design with tangata whenua? Does Ngā Aho Māori design offer ways that we can learn? So who wants to address that? Because yeah, we have two questions. One is like how we factor in the time for all this, yeah, like the importance of cultural competency and those relationships that, yeah, like if we think about it in a Western world, the time is money. It's like there's no space for those things that are key in relationship building. And then, yeah, like what is advice for us as tangata tiriti and teina on how can we engage better with tangata whenua?
Kia ora. Well, I'll have a quick comment, and that is to the question from a consultancy and that time is against you and so on. I would say start now. You don't wait until it's time to do the work, to think that you're on a tight budget. Start now. And if you don't make those relationships now, it will be too late when you come to be working on a project. And if you aren't able to do that now, maybe you're the wrong person to be doing it. Maybe it would be another tangata whenua who would be better skilled to be doing that. So think very carefully, improve your own skills, and don't expect that mana whenua will do it for you. I know my iwi have had many requests for pohiri, for relationships, for all sorts of things, and things that people haven't done is do the learning themselves first of all before they go and expect that mana whenua will have all the time in the world to give it to them. So yes, I think it's a two-way thing rather than expecting it to come from mana whenua. Kia ora. Throw the rākau, so throw it to Josephine.
Kia ora Dai. I taitoko ngā kōrero support you Dai and your kōrero. Early engagement is the best form of engagement and consistent engagement. And as a design practice, we just need to do better and make the time. And you budget for it, because you're going to have a design process and it needs to go for review. If you work here in Tāmaki, it's a known, so you make time in your scheduling and your feasibility offer of service to schedule in wānanga or schedule in hui, and it will make your project better, like Lucy's talking about with their engagement with the taniwha meeting, the taniwha. And that's what we want. We don't want the same breadcrumbs around Tāmaki or Aotearoa. We want to see our bones in our places, but alongside our whānau that help us do that. And I think with projects, it's not just a po in the ground. You know, we can create better relationships like what we do at home with our taiohi, our babies, our mokopuna, is that we're teaching learning, and that's mauri restoration as well. If you have iri on site, that's restoring the mauri of that whenua. If they haven't been on site for a long time, that's restoring the mauri of the whenua. And find places within your design process to contract tangata whenua, mana whenua ropu, to build capability, you know, to offer solutions so that, you know, they don't have the alphabet soup after their name. That doesn't mean that they're not tuākana in their mahi, you know. So humility is a good thing. I think the best way of engagement is to go for a pohiri process, you know, like do your own learning. There's lots of kurapo classes out there. If you're a New Zealand citizen, they're free. You know, find places to upskill. And then you can be better equipped to do those kinds of site analysis, due diligence. You know, when we do projects as landscape architects, we have to go and do a site analysis, yeah.
Oh, so
Just
powerful,
yeah.
Kōrero. Yeah.
Just a quick one from me. Te ao Māori immersion, you know, it takes time, and I talked about it before. You know, the Chinese developers took us 2 years before we got to sign off a memorandum of understanding between mana whenua and the developers. And also when you think about the legislation and the RMA, section 6, 7 and 8, there's this consent process that developers have to go through. And if they're not engaging with mana whenua, council's going to pull a section 91 and say, you haven't got that information, you need to go talk to the iwi. So you better to do it at the beginning and do it really well. And like most things, you know, relationships take time. And I guess it's really important, like from I was in my own consultancy for like 20 years, and you know who to play with and you know who to avoid, and that's really important, to be discerning about who you work with, because if they're not cutting it, you don't want to be playing with them. And it's definitely a learning journey. In terms of the tangata tiriti, teina, Kōrero, Diana's a really good example of how we as a whānau of Ngā Aho have been able to support and manaki her, just using for her as an example because she's right there. And also we, in terms of our makeup, we do have a kaupapa whānau cohort. So anybody can be a part of the Ngā Aho whānau. And also, you know, I'm going to put it out there, you know, don't jump on the waka and don't pick up a paddle. If you're going to come on board as part of our Ngā Aho whānau, we like to know what you're up to, and not only how, you know, we can help you, but also how you can help us as allies. So that's that value of taututu, reciprocity. So I just wanted to, yeah, just to comment on those. Thank you, Fiona.
No, Tlatsoka Mati. Thank you. Gracias for your comment, Lucy. Like, I'm very honored for that. And yeah, like I'm so grateful because I've learned so much. And yeah, just looking ways to keep engaging and exchanging knowledges, and hopefully not in the far future we can go to Aviala, to Semanawak, to where my bones and my ancestor bones are, to keep connecting with with pueblos originarios. That will be the term that we use in Mexico, from the place that I have the privilege to whakapawatu. Okay, so Tlatoka Mati, muchas gracias. Thank you very much, Ngā mihi nui, for this amazing kōrero. I could have comments keep coming, but yeah, we run out of time. But thank you very much for that. It's amazing contributions, thoughts and reflections that we can all learn from. So we recorded this session, and we hope that we can share it more around our networks, especially indigenous networks in Aviala, in Turtle Island, in other places that we can learn and exchange from each other. So thank you very much. And let's close with Diane with Karakia, and then we can end the session.
Thank you. Just a quick bit of explanation of what I'm going to say, because it links to what we've been talking about. It's about drawing on the sacredness to clear and free the heart, the body and the spirit of mankind, and drawing everybody together and to affirm that. So te karakia whakamutunga, unahia, unahia, unahia ki uru tapu nui. Kia wātea, kia mama, te nākau, te tinana, te wairua, I te ara tangata, koia rā e rongo, whakairia ake ki runga, kia tina. Tina. Hui e tae.
Kia ora. Thank you. Have a great night.
I'm here too. Thank you.